Our top local story on News Radio WBBM. Some students at Northwestern University are joining a nationwide protest calling for a ceasefire in the war in Gaza. WBBM's Nancy Harty's there. She joins us live with the story.
Rachel, students are chanting Free Palestine while linking arms in a line to prevent police from getting at several tents here at Deering Meadow. The student government voted last night in support of a resolution demanding the university end partnerships that they say legitimize genocide, occupation, and war in Gaza. We spoke to a grad student named Eden who says they've been pushing for these demands for some time.
This is not sort of a new demand. We've repackaged it in this sort of people's resolution, but there have been activists on this campus for decades calling for these exact demands. So the university is pretty well aware of what exactly we've been calling for.
From our vantage point here behind a fence near the sidewalk, we could not see pushing that appears to have happened earlier between police and protesters. Northwestern says in a statement the tents violate university policies, and police and staff are working to get them removed, and students who refuse to remove their tents will be subject to arrest. Reporting live from Northwestern, Nancy Harty, News Radio 105.9 WBBM.
This morning, Highland Park residents and their supporters returned to the street that saw so much violence a year ago. It's all in an effort to reclaim the parade route and their community. WBBM's Nancy Harty is there.
Gary from Arlington Heights says he has an idea of what Highland Park residents are going through after personally witnessing the Las Vegas concert shooting 6 years ago.
Over the years, the memory fades from people who weren't involved. And 1 year for the Highland Park people is like yesterday. And I thought it was important to come here and show support for them.
David Macklin from Highland Park says it was great to see how his city has come together in an effort to make sure they're not defined by one moment.
The walk was an opportunity, I think, to exhale, literally and figuratively. As people walked west on Central Avenue, we got our sense of self back, sense that this is our community, and God willing, starting tomorrow, it'll all be normal.
Many of the people we spoke to after the remembrance ceremony and community walk say they know people who weren't comfortable returning to the Port Clinton area on the anniversary, saying it's still too raw. In Highland Park, Nancy Harty, 105.9 WBBM.
A restaurant in downtown Skokie is serving up more than pastries and lunch. WBBM's Nancy Harty has this week's difference maker.
Will's Place employs about 25 people who don't always have an easy time finding work. Jeff Halligan manages the nonprofit and is cousins with Will, who uses a tablet to communicate with customers.
Our main goal is to create a safe place for both, real work for adults with disabilities, as well as a safe place for people to come in who have disabilities, have lunch, spend time with their friends.
Jackie's been working there since the cafe opened in July 2023, serving favorites such as the freshly baked chocolate chip cookies and chicken Caesar wrap.
I love it. We have laughs, and we just enjoy each other's company.
The menu started with sandwiches, but head chef Michael Pfeiffer has been adapting it as employees learn.
The biggest thing we like to focus on is growing and getting better. So in the beginning, it was all cold stuff. A lot of it was prepped ahead. Now we're starting to get into more like butchery and being able to use like raw proteins, chicken, steak.
Halligan says relatives tell them employees are picking up more than culinary and serving skills.
Just us providing the opportunity has given all of them the ability to showcase who they are, what they can do, and the confidence that it has given them. It truly is night and day for some of my guys.
Those opportunities include Friday night gatherings for employees and their friends just to hang out. Will's Place, making a difference in Skokie. Nancy Harty, News Radio 105.9 WBBM.
On this last unofficial day of summer, someone posted fake signs in Rogers Park saying that Loyola Beach is clothing optional. WBBM's Nancy Harty got to the bottom of the story and reports it's not.
They look real. 2 rectangular signs with the Chicago Park District seal on them showed up on posts at Loyola Beach. 49th Ward Alderwoman Maria Haddon tells WBBM one of her constituents alerted her to the signs, which remind her of other parks-related hijinks from the beginning of the pandemic.
Don't know if it's the same pranksters, but it was funny.
Despite an effort back in 1932 by one of her predecessors, Alderman George Williston, to create a nude beach there, Haddon says the resolution went nowhere.
You've got to wear swimwear, your minimum clothing. You're not allowed to be fully nude on any of our beaches in Chicago.
She's informed the Park District and expects the signs, like summer, to be gone soon. Nancy Harty, News Radio 105.9 WBBM.
In our top local story on News Radio WBBM, well, better late than never. After 2.5 years of construction and delays, Metra's new train station at Peterson and Ridge in the Edgewater neighborhood is now open. The details from WBBM's Nancy Harty.
Like others in this neighborhood, Damien has been waiting for this day for years. He says he bought a place nearby around the time of the station's groundbreaking in the fall of 2021, and taking Metra is more convenient than driving or other mass transit to get to work downtown.
Drive a mile and a half, park, find a place to park, or find a place to park a bike or take a divvy or anything like that. It's not really well served in this neighborhood. And the other option is to walk to Granville and take the red line and then switch to the brown line and then go to the merchandise mart and then walk from there.
Several of the UP North Line commuters we've talked to said they expect to save about a half hour each way with the new station. It has a drop-off spot and circle drive, handicapped parking spots, a warming area on each side, and 4 weekday trains just added. At the Peterson and Ridge Station, Nancy Harty, News Radio 105.9 WBBM.
3 months after he was fired over a hazing scandal, former head football coach Pat Fitzgerald is now suing Northwestern University for wrongful termination, defamation, and breach of contract. The details from WBBM's Nancy Harty.
Attorney Dan Webb says the lawsuit seeks $130 million for what Pat Fitzgerald had remaining on his coaching contract and lost future job earnings, plus unspecified punitive damages.
There was not any significant hazing that occurred at Northwestern, and yet my client was terminated for no reason whatsoever.
He points to a comment made days before firing Fitzgerald in which University President Michael Schill said there was no evidence the coach was aware of any hazing.
No coach in America could have done what Coach Fitzgerald did in developing what are known as due diligence programs to prevent hazing from occurring.
Northwestern says Fitzgerald had the responsibility to know hazing was occurring and to stop it, but failed to. Nancy Harty, News Radio 105.9 WBBM.
Breaking news from News Radio 105.9 WBBM.
A shocking development in court today where Highland Park suspect Robert Cremo III was expected to change his plea. We go live now to WBBM's Nancy Harty, who was in the courtroom with the latest. Nancy.
Andy, this is not the outcome survivors and victims of the parade shooting were expecting. We just left the courtroom here and saw the shocked look on many of their faces. Lake County prosecutors read what they said was a negotiated plea with Robert Cremo III that would have him spend natural life in prison plus 30 years if he pleaded guilty to 55 charges, including 7 first-degree murder charges. But when it came time for him to agree to it, he initially failed to respond to Judge Victoria Rossetti, instead sitting silently in a wheelchair we have not seen in court before, by the way. There was a brief recess. He talked with his public defenders, and when he came back, he said in a quiet voice, no. So the trial will go forward, scheduled for February of next year. We're expected to hear from maybe some of the survivors, maybe some of their attorneys after here, but as I said, they were shocked by this development. Reporting live from Lake County, Nancy Harty, News Radio 105.9 WBBM.
2 men from Indiana found a driver yesterday who had been pinned inside his truck for days after crashing off of Interstate 94.
Mario Garcia of Hobart was walking along Salt Creek at around 3:45 in the afternoon with his son-in-law looking for potential fishing holes when the men caught a glimpse of a truck crashed under an I-94 overpass near Portage.
There was nobody around, and I don't see any way somebody could have seen him. It was just a very fortunate that we've seen through the cracks of the woods the shiny of the wreck, and curiosity that took us over there, because then it could have been a different outcome if we either didn't go out or didn't see him, but I'm just glad we did.
Garcia says he moved the airbag out of the way and touched the man who jerked awake, startling them. Indiana State Police say fire crews removed the man, who they believe has been trapped since last Wednesday. He's been identified as 27-year-old Matthew Riem from Mishawaka and is in the hospital fighting for his life. Nancy Harty, News Radio 105.9 WBBM.
It's back starting tomorrow, the Chicago Botanic Gardens Lightscape event, where the fact that the sun sets early is actually a good thing.
New this year along the 1.3-mile trail is a trip out to Evening Island, where neon lasers cut through the dark while giant 5-foot lilies float in the water. The Botanic Gardens' Jody Zombolo says the location gives visitors a different perspective.
It's like you're seeing each installation twice almost, just on a one-way route.
While outdoor light displays have grown in popularity, she contends their creative partners make them stand out.
You're seeing light art from the United Kingdom, from France.
As we had a chance to see firsthand, the weather can change the experience, with rain adding a sparkle to the lights and snow illuminating the trail even more.
Each time, depending upon the weather, it's different. But it's beautiful any way you look at it.
Lightscape runs on select days through January 7th, and tickets are still available. Nancy Harty, News Radio 105.9 WBBM.
It's 3:11. People who have lost a loved one have a new place to try to connect with them now that an Evanston mother has helped install a wind phone at the Canal Shores Golf Course. WBBM's Nancy Harty explains.
I want it to be a place that everybody knows about, that they can come and have their private moment.
Mary Leopold lost her 19-year-old son, Oliver, unexpectedly in December of 2021. After that, the licensed clinical social worker learned about wind phones, an idea that started in Japan 13 years ago to help grieving people use non-working phones to place a call to their dearly departed.
Saying what you want to say to that person or people, and then just kind of this was the original meaning of just letting your words kind of be carried by the wind, which I think is so beautiful.
The Canal Shores Board approved Oliver's wind phone, which was installed in June near Hole 11. It's a rotary phone that sits inside a vintage British-style phone booth in fire engine red, as a nod to the paramedic career he planned to start. Nancy Harty, News Radio 105.9 WBBM.
Yellow Line trains have been running again this morning, the first since a November crash. CTA leadership just stopped talking to reporters a short time ago. WBBM's Nancy Harty joins us live from Skokie with what they had to say.
Cisco CTA President Dorval Carter says in the 7 weeks since the crash that injured 7 workers and dozens of riders, the agency conducted a thorough review before running Yellow Line trains once again.
We would only make this decision after we had absolute confidence that we could do so safely. And we are here to tell you that we have that confidence.
That confidence, he says, comes from interim measures that mean Yellow Line trains will only go 35 miles an hour at their fastest instead of the old 55, and cleaning a stretch of grade-level track from any debris where the crash took place. There was a lot Carter did not talk about in the NTSB investigation because he says they are not publicly allowed to until the final report sometime later this year. Reporting live in Skokie at the Oakton station, Nancy Harty, News Radio 105.9 WBBM.
It's time for the once-a-year treat of punchkis. The Polish cousin of the donut is being gobbled up by the dozen today, this Fat Tuesday.
Standing in the back kitchen of Benison's, Blaine Downer tells us how she'd like to experiment with more punchki flavors, like Oreo cream that was a hit, but there isn't much room.
The bakery's not that big itself. Like, this is probably newer in the last 10 to 12 years as part of the bakery. It slowly got bigger, so there's not room to store stuff. Like, there's a table above us.
Below that table were racks of punchkis waiting to be filled by an army of bakery workers. Missing is Guy Downer, who bought Benison's in 1967 and turned 100 years old last month.
He just loves everything. When he comes here, like, it doesn't matter what it is, he looks at it and just takes a bite out of it. It's really fun, and, like, he still helps.
Blaine says they stopped taking online and phone orders over the weekend, but have punchkis for walk-ins as long as they're in stock. Benison's also sells the sweet treats to some local coffee shops, a grocery store, and even a bar. Nancy Harty, News Radio 105.9 WBBM.
A day and a career to remember. Lake County Sheriff's K-9 Dax is celebrated today during a well-deserved retirement party after getting injured on the job last month. WBBM's Nancy Harty reports from Libertyville.
Deputy John Forlenza shared stories of how Dax caught a suspect with a stolen ATM in a stolen truck after the man hid in 6-foot-tall grass, and how the German Shepherd dazzled school kids during demonstrations.
I've loved being his best friend and handler for the last 9 years. That time has gone by so fast. I wish I took more in time to enjoy the little things during his career. That looking back seems so much bigger now.
The outdoor retirement ceremony brought out civilian and police dogs and admirers like Leo Kalish, a retired dispatcher.
John and Dax have this camaraderie between them, this feeling between both of them. They sense each other. and just follow their instincts together.
Dax was partially paralyzed after catching a suspect last month and regained use of his hind legs due to therapy. In retirement, he'll live with the Forlenza family, their other dogs, and a cat named Mittens. In Libertyville, Nancy Harty, News Radio 105.9 WBBM.
Our top local story on WBBM. Police have moved down to the University of Chicago campus to clear a tent encampment set up by anti-war protesters. WBBM's Nancy Harty is there and joins us live now from Hyde Park.
Cisco, protesters are chanting, "We are the encampment," as they square off against university police lined up here just west of the quad, blocking access to the place where they had, for the last 8 days, been occupying. The police are wearing riot helmets, and some students are wearing goggles, maybe in anticipation that tear gas may be used. What we have been told is that around 4:45 a.m., students who had been warned at like 3 o'clock to expect a raid, things quieted down, they went back to sleep, and then at 4:45 a.m., university police came in and started clearing the encampment. One of the professors I spoke to said that they began throwing tents and some of the wood pallets that were used to kind of demark the area, and we don't know of any arrests at this point. There were leaflets handed out to students telling them that they needed to vacate the space, otherwise they faced arrest and potential sanctions from the school. At this point, we don't know of any that have been. For now, just a lot of chanting. There was some pushing a little bit ago, but for now, we're just kind of at a standstill. Reporting live from the University of Chicago, Nancy Harty, News Radio 105.9 WBBM.
This week's Made in Chicago features a family-run bakery in Edgewater. It was battle-tested by the pandemic and came out stronger.
Loaves of bread in ovens stacked 4 high get a burst of steam to give them a glossy shine. Paul Wonkamalasai is head baker at Flour, spelled with a PH, that's been serving up sourdough, quiche, and laminated pastries for 8 years.
Everybody can open the bakery. The key is persistent consistency. I think that's important.
That consistency is obvious in the perfectly uniform croissants that line trays in the kitchen on Bryn Mawr. Wonkamalasai knows quality rarely comes quickly.
Not just business, it's the baking world. You cannot cheat time. Time, you gotta allow time to do the process. Time to do the fermentation. You gotta wait. You cannot say, well, it's 2 hour fermentation. You cannot say, I'm gonna do half hour, and then I'm gonna go to the next process. No, nothing new. Everything had to follow the time.
To make Flour's signature sourdough bread, he uses a starter that's at least 15 years old.
In Belgium, they have sourdough's library. They have a sourdough starter from all over the world, and they maintain it in a controlled environment.
The start of the pandemic meant the family worked 12-hour days, baking and delivering to customers.
It's a test of the family, that we togetherness. That's what it tests, because everybody pitching, nobody, like, oh, I'm tired, I want to get away. So no, actually COVID helped us, make us stronger.
Made stronger, made in Chicago. Nancy Harty, News Radio 105.9 WBBM.